What if the walls of a forgotten city could whisper the stories of its past? Stay with me. We're venturing into an abandoned ghost town where every building is a frozen memory and every shadow holds a riddle. I'm the one who went there, and this is what I saw. My name is Alex, and I've never been a believer in the supernatural. The world, to me, was a series of explainable events, a predictable clockwork of cause and effect. But what happened last September, deep in the sprawling green mountains of Vermont, shattered that clockwork and showed me the terrifying silent gears grinding away underneath. I was driving alone, the road, twisting like a serpent through the dense, ancient forests of the Appalachians. The GPS had died. Hours ago, its screen a blank, mocking void, the last sign of civilization. A sleepy one-pump gas station was a good 40 miles behind me. I was searching for a place that existed only as a gray, forgotten smudge on older maps, a phantom on the periphery of the known world. Eldridge, a town that officially ceased to exist in 1952. The reasons why were buried under decades of official redactions and local folklore, a tapestry of rumor and fear. Some said it was a mining collapse, others whispered of a disease. But the strangest stories, the ones that drew me in, spoke of something else entirely. They said the town hadn't died, it had vanished. The fog came without warning. It wasn't a natural mist rolling down from the hills. It was a sudden suffocating blanket of white, thick as cotton wool, that swallowed the road ahead. My headlights barely pierced it, creating two feeble cones of light that seemed to bend back towards me. It felt less like weather and more like a wall, a physical barrier trying to turn me back. But I had come too far. I slowed the car to a crawl, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my heart thudding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. And then, through the swirling vapor, a shape emerged. Dark, weathered wood. I stopped the car. The engines hum. The only sound in a world gone silent. I stepped out, the damp, cold air clinging to my skin. There it was. A hand-carved sign, tilting on a single rusted post. The letters faded, but horribly clear. Welcome to Eldridge. Population 0. By the way, we're a new channel. If you're into the atmospheric, the unsettling, and the deeply mysterious, this is the place for you. Hit that subscribe button. We're telling a new story every day. And now, hold on tight. The silence was the first thing that truly unnerved me. It wasn't just quiet, it was a profound and absolute absence of sound. No bird song, no rustle of leaves in the wind, no distant hum of traffic. It was a vacuum, as if the very air had forgotten how to carry noise. I walked past the sign and onto what must have been Main Street. The buildings stood like weathered tombstones, silent sentinels to a forgotten tragedy. A general store with a shattered display window, the glass like crystallized tears on the warped wooden porch. A fire station, its bay doors slightly ajar, swaying with a faint, rhythmic creak that seemed to defy the windless air. A schoolhouse, its proud sign hanging askew, the paint flaking away to reveal the dark wood beneath. The town wasn't ruined or destroyed. It was preserved, as if caught in a single held breath, for 70 years. My boots crunched on the gravel-strewn asphalt, the sound obscenely loud in the stillness. I chose a house, at random, a 2-story clapboard that might have been painted blue once. The front door was unlocked. It swung inward with a low groan of protest, releasing a cloud of dust, motes that danced in the slivers of light piercing the grimy windows. Inside, the scene was one of impossible stasis. A dining table was set for 4, plates and silverware coated in a thick, gray blanket of dust. In the living room, a child's red rubber ball sat in the middle of the floor, perfectly still. It was the only spot of color in the monochrome decay. I walked up the creaking staircase, my hand trailing along the dusty banister. In a child's bedroom I found it. An open album of school photographs, dated 1949. Young faces, boys with slicked back hair, and girls with neat ribbons, all beaming with the unshakable optimism of youth. Beneath one of the class photos, a tidy cursive inscription read, "See you all in the fall." But for Eldridge, it seemed, the fall of 1952 never came. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of a hurried evacuation. It was as if every man, woman, and child had simply evaporated in the middle of a mundane Tuesday afternoon. "You really think there's anything interesting out here, man? Besides mold and tetanus?" The voice, crackling through my phone speaker, was James, my friend, my cameraman, and my designated voice of reason. He'd arrived the next day, his beat-up SUV loaded with camping gear and enough skepticism to power a small city. He stood beside me on Main Street, panning his camera across the desolate scene. "It's not what's here, it's what's not here," I said, my voice low. "There are no packed bags, no abandoned cars filled with belongings. The town records I found online just stop. It's like they were all writing a sentence and put their pens down at the exact same moment." James sighed, lowering his camera. "All right, Alex, you've got your spooky ghost town. Let's get some B-roll and we can be eating pizza in Burlington by 9. But I couldn't leave. The mystery of the place had its hooks in me. We decided to stay the night, a decision that, in hindsight, was the hinge upon which my entire understanding of reality swung open to reveal a chasm. We pitched our tent in the overgrown yard of the old public library, its stone facade seeming more solid, more trustworthy than the wooden homes. As darkness fell, the town transformed. The oppressive silence deepened, and the shadows stretched and warped, seeming to crawl and writhe at the edges of our vision. I woke up around midnight, or at least I think it was. My watch had stopped. A strange sound had pulled me from a restless sleep. It was a whisper, a faint, sibilant hiss that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I sat bolt upright, my heart hammering. I unzipped the tent and peered out. The moon was hidden behind a thick veil of clouds, casting the town in an almost absolute darkness. There was nothing, no one, just the creak and groan of old wood settling, and an atmosphere so taut, so charged it felt like the air itself was screaming silently. The next morning, James looked pale. He was quiet, chewing on a protein bar with a grim expression. "You hear anything last night?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded, slowly. I thought I was dreaming. It sounded like a kid crying, really faint. Seemed to be coming from over there. He pointed towards the residential street we'd explored yesterday. An unspoken agreement passed between us. We packed up the camp, but we weren't leaving. Not yet. We spent the morning methodically checking the houses, moving with a new sense, a purpose, a creeping dread that replaced my initial academic curiosity. In the third house, a small bungalow with peeling yellow paint, we found the source of our unease. The cellar door in the kitchen was slightly ajar. A wave of cold, musty air flowed up from the darkness. We descended the rickety wooden steps, our flashlights cutting through the gloom. The cellar was damp and smelled of earth and rot, and in the far corner, tucked beneath a collapsed shelving unit, was a small tin box. Inside, nestled amongst dried leaves and dead insects, were several audio tape reels, the kind used in old reel-to-reel recorders. One of them had a small, yellowed label affixed to it. The handwriting was neat, feminine. It read, September 22nd, 1951. Helen. It took us 2 hours to find a working outlet in the fire station and rig up the ancient reel-to-reel player we discovered in the library's office. We threaded the brittle brown tape, and with a click and a whir, the silence of Eldridge was broken by a voice from the past. Greater than, "It's getting worse. The town is losing itself. After that night, nothing has been the same. The shadows are longer. Even at noon, people are talking to themselves, their eyes looking at things that aren't there. My husband Robert, he just stares out the window for hours. And the ones who walk down to the lake, they don't come back. Greater than..." The tape hissed into silence. James looked at me, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning fear. "The lake?" We looked at the old town map we'd printed out. There, a half-mile east of the town limits, was a body of water marked Lake Eldridge. We had to see it. The path to the lake was overgrown, little more than a deer trail. The woods here felt different, older, more watchful. Then the trees parted, and we stood at the edge. Lake Eldridge was a perfect circle of dark, glassy water. It was unnaturally still, a polished obsidian mirror, reflecting the bruised gray sky. There was no ripple, no lapping of water against the shore. The air was heavy, cold. A single moss-covered rowboat was half pulled onto the muddy bank, as if its owner had just stepped out for a moment 70 years ago. Next to it, hammered into the ground, was a crude wooden sign. The words were carved deep, as if in a hurry. "Do not enter after sunset." Some old town superstition, you think? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Or a warning," James replied, his camera hanging limply from his hand. We returned to the relative safety of the town as the afternoon light began to fade. The feeling of being watched was no longer a vague paranoia. It was a certainty. We decided to sleep in the library itself that night, barricading the heavy oak doors. Sleep was a long time coming. I eventually drifted into a shallow, dream-plagued doze, only to be jolted awake by James, shaking my shoulder. "Alex! Alex, wake up! Look!" I sat up, groggy. He was pointing at his watch, then at mine, which I had managed to reset. Both were frozen at 3:17 a.m. I pulled out my phone. No signal, as expected, but the clock read the same. 3:17 a.m. I looked out the tall, arched window. It was pitch black outside, utterly dark, but a strange pre-dawn light should have been starting to color the horizon. It felt like we'd been asleep for hours. "How long has it been like this?" I asked, my throat dry. "I don't know. At least an hour." We were trapped in a frozen moment. Time itself was broken. In Eldridge. As the silent, nameless dread began to truly set in, my flashlight beam caught something on the windowpane. It wasn't there when we'd gone to sleep. Scratched into the grimy glass from the inside were two words, jagged and desperate. "Do not stay." We had to get more information. Before we lost our signal coming into the valley, I'd managed to find the name of a local historian in the next county, a man named Norman Bailey, who had written a short, obscure monograph about the lost townships of Vermont. James's satellite phone, our one lifeline, thankfully, still worked. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice frail and crackly. "Eldridge?" he said, a note of profound weariness in his tone. "You boys shouldn't be there. You need to leave." "We can't," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "Something's wrong here. The town, it's empty, but it feels full. We found some tapes." I heard him sigh, a long, rattling exhalation. "Eldridge didn't die, son. It was abandoned. It was given over. In the fall of '51, people started to go missing. First one or two, then families. No trace, no bodies. The state police came, found nothing. The official story was a dam break. That never happened. Then a mine collapse that was faked. The truth is, nobody knew. All they had were the last letters that made it out. Talk of strange lights over the lake, of sounds in the night, of people changing. Changing how? I pressed. The last letter we have is from the schoolteacher, a woman named Eleanor Vance. Her diary was found in a mailbox a month after the town was quarantined by the state. She wrote that people's eyes were different, that they'd look at you, but they wouldn't see you, like their bodies were home, but their minds had gone somewhere else. She said it started after the new power station went online. Power station? That was a new detail. Experimental geothermal plant. Built a few miles north of the lake. Advanced stuff for its time. They were trying to tap into something deep in the earth. Maybe they did. Listen to me. That place isn't just empty. It's a wound. And it's still bleeding. Don't let it swallow you too. Some doors are not meant to be opened. The line went dead. The historian's words hung in the air between us. A power station. It was another piece of the puzzle. But leaving was no longer an option. It felt like the town was holding us, tightening its grip. Every house we entered offered a new, disturbing clue. In the offices of the local newspaper, the Eldridge Chronicle, we found the final, half-printed edition from October 1951. The lead story was about the new geothermal plant, hailing it as the dawn of a new era of prosperity. Tucked away, on page 3 was a small article, about an unusual number of residents reporting insomnia and waking dreams. In another house, we found a family Bible. Tucked inside was a frantic, handwritten note. "He is not my husband. He looks like him, sounds like him, but his gaze is on that unholy water. They are not our people anymore. The body is here, but the soul is somewhere else." The next day, we decided to investigate the sheriff's office. It seemed like the logical place to find official records, a less personal account of what had happened. We reached the small brick building. "I'll check the main office. You take the holding cells in the back," I said to James. "Yell if you find anything." He just nodded, his face grim, and disappeared around the side of the building. I spent an hour in the sheriff's office, sifting through dust-covered files. Most of it was mundane disputes, minor thefts. But then I found the sheriff's personal logbook, tucked away in a desk drawer. The last few entries were chilling. October 5th, 1951, Miller reported his wife missing. Found her standing waist-deep in the lake at 2 a.m. Said she was listening. Her eyes, God help me, her eyes were black. All black. October 12th, 1951. 3 more. Families gone. The phones are dead. The road out seems wrong. Drove 10 miles and ended up back at the town. Sign. Something is closing in. October 19th, 1951. It comes from the lake. The energy from the plant woke it up, or called it. It doesn't take you, it replaces you. We are echoes now, empty houses waiting for new tenants. If anyone reads this, for God's sake, burn this town to the ground. My blood ran cold. I dropped the book and bolted outside, yelling for James. There was no answer, just the oppressive, listening silence. I searched for him for 2 hours, my shouts growing, more and more frantic, echoing, unanswered through the dead streets. I checked the holding cells. Empty. I circled the building, my panic building into a wave of pure terror. Then I heard a footstep behind me. I spun around. It was James. He was just standing there, at the edge of the street, perfectly still. Relief washed over me for a split second before being replaced by a tidal wave of ice-cold dread. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The way he stood, the unnatural stillness of his posture. "James, where the hell have you been? I was screaming for you." He didn't answer. He just took a slow step towards me. And then he lifted his head, and I saw his eyes. They were gone. In their place were 2 glistening, depthless orbs of pure black, like holes punched through reality into a void of infinite night. There were no pupils, no irises, no white, just perfect, horrifying blackness. A voice came from his lips, but it wasn't his voice. It was a chorus, a layered, resonant sound that seemed to emanate from deep underwater. "You still want to know the truth, Alex?" The voice echoed, a sound that vibrated in my bones. "We are the truth. The town is not forgotten. It is waiting to be filled." I didn't think. I ran. I turned and sprinted, blind with terror, away from the thing that wore my friend's face. I ran through the twisted streets, into the woods, trying to get to my car, to the road, to anywhere but here. But the forest itself seemed to conspire against me. The trees were too close together, their branches like grasping arms. Paths I thought I recognized, twisted and folded back on themselves. Every direction I took, every frantic escape I attempted, led me inexorably towards one place, towards the unnatural stillness of the lake. I burst from the tree line and stumbled onto the muddy shore, my lungs burning. And I saw it. The sun had set, and the lake was glowing. A soft, phosphorescent, blue-green light pulsed from its depths, illuminating the water from within. It wasn't empty. I could see faces in the water, suspended in the glowing depths. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The faces from the 1949 school photo album. The faces of the families from the abandoned homes, all looking up at me with serene, empty expressions. Their eyes were all the same, all black, and among them, floating just below the surface, was James. His face was calm, peaceful. He was one of them. The whispers were louder. Now, a torrent of sound, rising from the water. The collective voices of the lost souls of Eldridge. Join us. The water is quiet. The waiting is over. I don't remember how I got out. The next thing I knew, it was morning. The fog was thick again, but it was a natural, dewy morning fog. I was in the driver's seat of my car, the key in the ignition, my hands shaking so violently could barely hold the wheel. The road ahead of me was clear. The town had let me go. I turned the key, and the engine sputtered to life. As I drove away, not daring to look in the rearview mirror, the old car radio crackled on, static coalescing into the voice of a news announcer. Greater than, and on this day in history, we remember the lost town of Eldridge, Vermont, believed to have been tragically destroyed in a geological landslide in the fall of 1952. Despite extensive searches, no trace of the nearly 300 residents was ever found. Greater than, but I know the truth. They weren't lost in a landslide. They are still there, all of them, waiting in the cold, silent water. And if you are listening to this, if you ever find a gray smudge on an old map of Vermont, stay away from Eldridge, because the town doesn't forget. And it is always looking for new residents. Now it's your turn. What do you think really happened to the town of Eldridge? Was it a curse, a failed scientific experiment that opened a portal, or something else entirely? Leave your thoughts and theories in the comments below. We're a new channel, and your support means the world to us. Please subscribe so you don't miss our next story.